The sun had not yet risen when the waves of the Pacific began to tremble beneath the hulls of American warships. Off the coast of Central America, the US Navy prepared for one of the most daring operations in decades. Intelligence had revealed what many had long feared. The Sinaloa Cartel, emboldened and armed with weapons purchased on the black market, had turned a stretch of coastline into a fortress. Concrete bunkers, reinforced hangars, radar arrays, and even anti-aircraft batteries had been placed along a rugged cliffside, all of it designed to repel anyone foolish enough to approach. But this time, the fortress would face not rival cartels or weak government forces. It would face the United States Navy and 4,000 American troops sent to dismantle it once and for all. The stage was set for a 6-hour siege that would shake the coast and echo across the world. Hours before the first shot, inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Bunker Hill, glowing radar screens painted a picture of the battlefield. Recon drones had mapped every bunker, every guard tower, every weapon emplacement hidden in the jungle. Overhead, satellites relayed live images, while under the waves, submarines monitored cartel boats attempting to flee the area. The Americans had planned meticulously. The cartel believed they had built an impenetrable fortress, but they were about to learn what it meant to stand against overwhelming power. At precisely 4:30 a.m., the first phase began. From over 100 miles offshore, Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from US destroyers roared through the night sky. Their exhaust trails lit the darkness as they streaked toward the cartel's radar and communication hubs. Within minutes, explosions thundered across the coastline, turning steel towers into twisted wreckage, silencing radars, and plunging the cartel fortress into chaos. Cartel lookouts, stunned and terrified, scrambled to radio their commanders, but static filled their channels. Minutes later, the horizon itself came alive. From the deck of the USS America, dozens of helicopters lifted off, carrying Marines armed to the teeth. Their rotors chopped the dawn air as formations of CH-53 Sea Stallions and UH-1Y Venoms surged toward the coastline. At the same time, amphibious assault vehicles rumbled down ramps, plunging into the surf, their armored hulls cutting through waves as Marines inside clutched rifles, waiting for the order to storm the beach. The cartel fighters had expected small raids, fast strikes, and hit-and-run tactics. They were not prepared for a mechanized assault backed by carrier air power. As the first waves of Marines stormed ashore, the cartel unleashed their defenses. From hidden bunkers, heavy machine guns opened fire, tracers slicing across the sand. Mortars thumped, sending plumes of dirt and flame into the air. RPGs streaked toward the amphibious vehicles, rocking their armor with deafening blasts. The beach turned into a wall of noise and fire, but the Marines pressed forward. Returning fire with precision, they called in close air support. Seconds later, F-35B Lightning II jets screamed overhead, their afterburners shaking the coastline. Precision-guided bombs struck bunker entrances, collapsing concrete and burying cartel gunners alive. Apache attack helicopters swooped low, unleashing Hellfire missiles into hardened positions, tearing through the defenses one by one. By 6 a.m., hundreds of Marines had secured a beachhead. Flags were planted, communication lines established, and artillery was brought ashore. The second wave arrived. More troops, more vehicles, and mobile rocket systems capable of flattening hardened defenses. The US had established a foothold, but the cartel was far from finished. From deep inside the jungle, convoys of cartel fighters poured toward the fortress. Trucks mounted with heavy weapons roared along dirt roads, filled with men armed with AK-47s, grenades and rocket launchers. They shouted war cries, convinced their sheer numbers would overwhelm the Americans, but they were walking into a trap. US drones circling overhead marked every convoy, feeding coordinates to artillery batteries now entrenched on the beach. The ground shook as American rockets screamed into the sky, arching before slamming into the jungle roads. Entire convoys were obliterated in seconds, fireballs consuming trucks, men, and weapons in an instant. Survivors fled into the trees, hunted by drones that never lost sight of them. By 7:30 a.m., the siege had shifted inland. US forces advanced toward the fortress itself. their ranks swelling to thousands. Snipers picked off cartel lookouts from hundreds of meters away. Armored vehicles bulldozed through makeshift barricades, crushing vehicles and sandbags alike. Overhead, constant air cover ensured that any attempt by the cartel to regroup was met with firepower from the sky. Inside the fortress, cartel commanders barked frantic orders. Their underground bunkers were filled with stockpiles of drugs, weapons, and cash worth billions. To them, this fortress was not just territory, it was their empire, their crown jewel. They ordered their men to fight to the last. Some even carried suicide vests, determined to take Americans with them. But discipline and desperation could not match the sheer scale of US military power. The climax of the siege came around 0830. As Marines stormed the outer walls of the fortress, cartel fighters detonated explosives hidden within the jungle, triggering massive blasts that tore through trees and shook the earth. For a moment, smoke and fire cloaked the battlefield. Then, out of the haze, the US response came. Abrams tanks rolled forward from landing craft, their cannons thundering. Shells ripped apart barricades and towers. The very foundations of the cartel fortress began to crumble. By 0900, American troops had breached the inner compound. Door by door, room by room, Marines cleared the fortress. Gunfire echoed through dark hallways. Grenades exploded in underground tunnels. Dogs trained for combat sniffed out hidden rooms packed with drugs and cash. Cartel fighters surrendered in droves, their will shattered by 6 relentless hours of fire and fury. Those who refused were cut down without hesitation. By 10:30, it was over. The fortress, once thought impregnable, lay in ruins. Smoke rose from shattered bunkers. Cartel weapons were piled in heaps, thousands of rifles, RPGs and heavy machine guns seized. Massive stacks of cocaine and heroin, worth billions on the black market, were seized and prepared for destruction. Hundreds of cartel fighters were dead, hundreds more captured, and the remainder scattered into the hills, leaderless and broken. The siege had lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of chaos that reshaped the coast forever. For the people of the region, who had lived in fear of the cartel fortress for years, the sight of American flags flying over the ruins was a moment of liberation. For the US military, it was a demonstration of overwhelming force, a reminder that when American power is unleashed, no fortress, no matter how heavily defended, can withstand it. The news spread across the world instantly. Images of the siege dominated headlines. Analysts debated the significance. Some saw it as a warning to other cartels, a declaration that no criminal empire is safe if it threatens US interests. Others feared escalation, asking whether this would spark even bloodier reprisals. But one fact was undeniable. The cartel fortress had fallen, crushed beneath the weight of 4,000 American troops and the might of the US Navy. The 6-hour siege that shook the coast will be remembered not just for its scale, but for what it symbolized. It was the collision of organized crime and organized power, a clash between a criminal empire and a military superpower. And in that clash, there was never any doubt who would emerge victorious. If you support the men and women who carry out these dangerous missions, share this story, hit like, and subscribe for more gripping accounts of modern military operations. And tell us in the comments, was this the end of the cartel's stronghold on the coast, or just the beginning of an even greater battle to come?